And we are live. Great.
Okay, are we going to roll the video?
We are.
All right, wonderful. Hi, everyone in Facebook land. We're about to roll a video of the Maafa experience. So for anyone who has not yet seen this amazing exhibit, we encourage you to check it out. If you visit us at ashecac.org, it will be in the pop-up menu, and we've created a little intro video to give you a taste of what that will be like. And we're going to roll it in just a moment.
That video coming up. All right, here we go. You're on mute, Carol. We can't hear you.
Oh, technology, technology. This is our first ever artist talk to accompany one of our Maafa or any other exhibit. We've been doing Ashe Lives and we featured some visual artists. However, this is our first ever virtual exhibit, which is guest curated by Gason Ayisyin. And it's our first ever artist talk that we are attempting to do via Facebook Live. So we would like to welcome you to this and welcome you to the Ashe Cultural Arts Center. Again, we encourage you to visit our main page, ashecsc.org, so that you can visit the exhibit. There'll be a pop-up that will come up. There is a survey that accompanies this exhibit that we would really love for people to fill out. The questions are both about your experience of the exhibit, and they're also about the vision for the show, which we're going to get into in just a moment. We really want to hear from you. So please take a moment to fill out the survey once you've had a chance to look at the exhibit. And without further ado, I'm going to introduce our guest curator. So our guest curator for the Maafa Experience exhibition is Gason Ayisyin. Gason Ayisyin is a New Orleans-based photographer who immigrated to the United States as a young child from Haiti. Through his upbringing, Gason's daily experiences were the sounds of drumming, the calls of ancestral spirits, the exaltation of dance, the tastes and smells of traditional Haitian foods, and the sights of healing folk medicine. Today, he is informed through a bicultural experience where modernity and custom converge into a unique worldview that values innovation, yet cherishes tradition. Gason's work embodies the gratitude he feels for his childhood experiences and the importance of culture as an anchor of fortitude throughout one's life. He sees cultural learning as a lifelong practice that cultivates different levels of understanding and changes shades with every generation.
Wow, thank you. Can you hear me? Yes.
Yes.
Oh, okay. Hello, greetings. I am Gason Ayisyin. Thank you very much for the introduction, Karel, Sloane. And I am an artist, I would say photographer as well as curator, thanks to experience at Ashe as well as other exhibits throughout the city. For me, I would say for Maafa, it was definitely an eye-opener. For my first Maafa in attendance, probably back in 2008, waking up early, sunrise around 6 o'clock in the morning to really experience that. And that I would say that brought me home. It really created a sense of familiarity as far as what I grew up with and being able to come to New Orleans and experience it. So being a guest curator for Ashe is definitely an honor, and I appreciate the opportunity to be able to do so. I want to talk about the vision. The vision this year was complicated, I would say. It started off, Karel, Sloane, and I, we spoke probably back in January, February, as far as the outline for the Maafa exhibit. And that's before COVID, before the protesting and unrest. So back then it was clear cut. It was basically trying to set up a form of providing the experience of Maafa to the individuals who may not attend. And I would say once COVID came, it was difficult trying to figure out how to do an exhibit. Especially given the formats in the past where you have people come into the gallery to be able to experience it, have actual artist talk, trying to figure out how social distance is going to work, and also even trying to think about a topic, a subject matter. When you have so much unrest, individuals not able to talk to each other face to face, not being able to touch one another. I did not know if it was going to happen or not. But through conversations with Karel, with Frederick Wood, given some insight as far as the idea of making it virtual, made it possible. Of course, I've never done a virtual exhibit before until Maafa, and trying to figure out how to make it personable in a virtual setting. So it was a learning curve trying to create the building, trying to create the structure. But I'm thankful for the artists to be able to provide the work based on the exhibit statement that helped everything to come together. Having the work and being able to make everything connect was very, I believe that was the easy part. It was more so trying to do the layout, trying to really allow the work to speak and do the artist's work justice in putting it together in this format. And even in thinking about coming up with healing as the main experience, it took a lot of just having conversation with friends and family, watching social media posts, seeing how individuals just going through the traumatic police brutalities and killings, and trying to find and make sense of that. It gets to a point where every other day you're seeing some video, and you're getting numb, you're getting upset, you're getting irritated, and then you're also quarantined as far as this not being able to go anywhere. So to me, everything really came together, and just the one thing that I felt was missing was just a healing component. So I wanted to find a way to not necessarily explain what being healed looks like, but at least to use that or consider that as an option, especially when you're dealing with so much trauma, visual trauma as far as through social media, it becomes very psychological. And when you're not being able to go to sleep or having conversations with your children and friends, not being able to really express yourself as far as given COVID, and then also thinking about not being able to attend funeral services, not being able to even see police officers in a way where you feel safe. And just the conversations at the time, especially back in March and April, it was very traumatic. And the one thing I felt was important, at least for this exhibit, was to at least provide some method to show that even as we're going through this, let us consider healing, or let us at least consider a break and being able to unplug from this trauma to spend some time with ourselves. And it really came together as far as this exhibit. It was a process for me as far as learning, not necessarily the design, but learning as far as the artist statement that was provided for the work really, even to me, made it even more meaningful and powerful. And I've had a conversation with individuals who were able to view the exhibit, and some individuals have been able to express their emotional response, and some of them broke down. Some of them had to watch it probably 5 or 6 times before they really were able to just reflect on what it meant for them. And it wasn't something that I took lightly. I really wanted individuals to feel it, and I really wanted to do the artists who contributed their work justice as well. And I hope I was able to do so.
Yes, I believe yes. Yeah, we're very fortunate to have you as a guest curator. Every year you bring a different way of helping people consider, process, reflect on, grieve, and celebrate what is probably the greatest national tragedy of all. And it's intricately linked to the whole life of the country.
Thank you. Thank you.
We're going to go on now to begin the artist discussion. And so I'm going to introduce our two artists. We have one who is with us here on the Zoom, and another we've pre-recorded her interview. She actually is recovering from surgery. So she will be speaking and she'll be responding to the questions as well. She'll just be doing it in a virtual way, another layer of virtual. So, and her name is Lisa DuBois. She is a New York-based photojournalist, artist, and curator. Her camera is a mirror. It creates photographs that reflect how she sees the world. She is an inquisitive spectator, exploring subcultures in the world. Her inspiration comes from an intense curiosity for all people, places, and things. Traveling to other parts of the world helped her appreciate the need for preserving traditions and maintaining cultural diversity in our society. She travels to places that arouse in her an emotional response that she can virtually translate and convey to others. Our second artist who we are featuring tonight is Lloyd G. Wade. Lloyd G. Wade is an artistic teacher, a creator of positive images that cause the viewer to think and to feel beyond the aesthetic beauty of the image. The viewer will find a rich use of cultural symbolisms and metaphoric imagery, inspired by music, poetry, and history. He has also been known to use the issues of the day as inspiration in his pieces. His artwork contains real issues that he hopes will inspire the viewer to change their way of thinking and give them a sense of pride in themselves. He illustrates life's natural processes through abstract expressions, the growth of the human mind, body, and soul. He is interested in the connection between life cycles and the earth itself, and how each of these coexist with the other. So I'm going to turn it over to Gason, and we're going to begin our discussion of our guided questions.
Hello, everyone. I am Gason Ayisyin once again, and welcome to the Maafa Experience Artist Talk. My first question would be to Lloyd G. Wade. Is healing possible?
Is healing possible? Yes, son. And again, thank you for having me here, first of all. Yes, healing is possible. And in today's issues with in the art world, we are in a place by which visual art communicates to all people and through all languages through a visual statement. So yes, healing is possible. We are consistently reinventing images to speak different communications throughout our political, our social connection. And in this time of our nation and world's situation, we've had to become very creative in doing those healings and connections. And now that we can actually touch each other, so we're virtually reaching out to try to create healing.
Thank you. Karel, Sloane, I guess there would be the same question for Lisa DuBois.
Yes, and so we're going to roll her video response. Okay, I think we're working out the audio. I believe, yes. So we appreciate your patience and understanding as we navigate this new normal that we're all in. The one comfort is that it's universal, right? No matter where you live in the world, this is the new normal.
Question. I thought of different types of healing, or even three. I thought of how we need to heal ourselves, how, it's possible for us to heal ourselves individually, how we would be healing as a nation, and how we heal together as a group in a Maafa or tribute to the ancestors type of event. And so I think that individual healing is a lot easier and quicker to get to, because as individuals, I think that when we begin to accept that even though we can't change the past, I'm talking about everything, everything combined. Even though we can't change the past, we can certainly change the future. So that means doing things like what we're doing and other things to just make have a healing for ourselves individually. And I think that we have to find healing within ourselves, because if we're depending on the external and the outside to do it for us, we should not waste that. Because it's, as people, we need to be happy and we need to be content with where we are as people. So like I said, we need to accept the fact that we cannot change the past, but definitely do things to, at the future, like what we're doing, marching and different things and having Maafa celebrations, Maafa ceremonies. I also believe that we as individuals, we need to draw very deeply on the strength that our ancestors had, because their strength was more powerful than ours in the sense of what they endured. You understand what I mean? Their strength is very, very powerful, and their strength has been passed on to us. So we need to try to tap into that and meditate on that and pray on that and ask the ancestors to bring us through this difficult time, because what we're going through is nothing compared to what they went through. Healing as a nation, I think, is much, much more difficult, because there's so much pushback and there's so much negative going on. And, until the masses of people, until people really start to look at the past and people become educated about the past and it's transparent, really healing cannot really occur until that happens. As a nation, I'm talking about. So healing as an individual, different, but healing as a nation, that would have to take a lot of people coming to recognition with some very ugly past. And I think that's why they didn't teach it in school. And now I think there are so many programs like Project 1619 and other things that I'm bringing it into the schools, but not only into the schools, but into places where adults, especially non-African American adults, can learn, because many of them really don't know the history. They don't want to know the history. So when transparency begins and people are it's being recognized in a much more serious way, then I don't think healing can begin as a nation, until that happens. Now, as a group, we can heal each other when we get together at Maafa. When we have a Maafa celebration, or in New York, when we have a tribute to the ancestors, the group consciousness of all of us getting together and doing things like libation, drumming, wearing white, just everyone wearing white automatically creates a camaraderie among us as people. So I think that walking together, releasing the white dove. That's symbolic. And so we need those symbols to help us move along. But those are all that's all very powerful imagery, but it unites us together. I feel lucky in many ways to be actually witnessing a sort of awakening that is happening across the nation in a completely different way than other types of things like civil rights. Okay, that was a different thing that's going on right now. But we're still dealing with that kind of hatred, and then they stick dogs on us. Now they're using dog whistles and they're shooting people, because of the obvious. So, I think that you can heal from 400 years of slavery so quickly. I don't believe that we can heal in 20, 30, 40, 50 years or with some reparations. And, you cannot heal 400 years. It is in our DNA. It's in our soul. It's not going to be leaving anytime quickly with some sort of, washing of, it's just not going to happen.
Thank you. Thank you, Lisa. And Lisa brought up some points, and I wanted to add to that some more as far as the possibility of healing. Have you, Lloyd, been able to, how is it to try to explain healing when you have someone actually going through trauma and trying to convince them that healing is possible?
Even with the trauma that we've experienced, but this isn't necessarily new. Especially we're talking about Louisiana and the southern states. I grew up there. I've experienced different types of trauma in my childhood and adulthood. And we're not talking about just police brutalities. We're talking about just outside brutalities because of the way this nation has been created. And the healing doesn't happen just with African Americans. It has to happen with all cultures. So it is, one person is considering themselves the victim, but otherwise, the person who is creating the hatred also has to heal as well. And we don't believe that every white person or Caucasian is evil, and those people are not also paying for the wrongdoings of their past, of their ancestors, upon our ancestors. But healing will have to continue, and it's been continuing. We're talking about, we had a march on Washington with Martin Luther King, and now we had a march on Washington with Martin Luther King Jr. III. So time is repeating itself because the issue keeps coming back up. The images that I used in the show, only one of that images were recent. Other images I've done for Trayvon Martin, and of course, the strange fruit and different things were done years prior to this. So these issues are not new. They're not new for visual artists. They're not new for the political standing of this. They are just issues that we're consistently dealing with. And healing is just like a wound. You get cut, you don't heal the same day. It takes time for that wound to heal. And you must nurture it and keep going with it. But you can't keep cutting and expect the wound to heal because you're giving it more violence. You have to create a dialect between each other. And this is a form of dialect that we're doing through visual arts to create healing amongst our people and other people too, because we're expressing this publicly. So in my case, I'm an educator. So at the same time, I teach different cultures. And at that same time, I'm trying to spread that healing through the children. Children don't come into the world knowing hatred, we teach it to them. And that is how this has been spreaded like a disease, like COVID, for the last 400 years. And it's very simple to first now teach our children how to love each other in your culture and outside of your culture.
Trauma and pain is not new. The things that our ancestors have dealt with, things that we're dealing with is not new. It has evolved and has changed. Just like you mentioned, as far as when you're cut, you still have to heal that cut. I guess I would like to segue that into saying, at what point or how would some individuals want to even, should they consider start the healing process, or how should one heal?
One should heal through, understanding what has happened, and also understanding that those things were wrong, and that we have to, again, get the next generation to see those things. Because basically all this is a leapfrog through time, and we're consistently building on things that happened in the civil rights. And now here we are at the same stage, trying to still mend those old wounds that our grandparents, who are now passing away, and still in the same fight. John Lewis was in the first civil rights march. And here we are at the same time dealing with that again. There's so many different links to this as well. We're talking about political, educational, social, religious, all these different things that are tied into the social problem of today. And I try to, as far as in my artwork, to at least bring those things front and center. And sometimes I hide it. I make it aesthetically beautiful to pull individuals in to analyze what's visually being said. Sometimes it's very, abrupt and simple to you to see. Other times it's something that you have to discover. And then we have to heal within ourselves. Each individual has that experience by which they've dealt with something that has to help them heal. Either this is, we're talking about single parent households where children are not being raised with their fathers and mothers. The grandparents are raising the children's. And then also educating within school, with education allowing the teacher to teach the proper things. And these things are consistently changing. They're changing every day in education. They're changing every day in our society. But you're always going to have the pushback. So as we do this, go ahead.
A quick interjection before you go any further. I know one thing you mentioned as far as being able to confront the trauma. Is it the victim's responsibility, or should they even wait for whoever or whatever caused the trauma to get better to even start the process, or should they be an individual process for themselves as far as healing?
The confront of the trauma is for everyone, because as we're saying, okay, does a 5-year-old have this trauma yet versus a 95-year-old who's been virtually through an extreme amount of trauma? So there is an individual responsibility for each and every one of us to express our feelings, to communicate. And that's basically, in a nutshell, we haven't communicated with each other, on both sides of the issue. The communication is uncomfortable, and we have not communicated with each other. And a lot of different things are with that, stereotypes and different things that we put upon different people, and saying that we're assuming that they are a certain way, And me being a African-American of dark complexion. I'm 6'7", so I'm a very towering individual when you don't know me. So people do sometimes assume that, and I don't use my height as a aggression, but people do make that preconception of who you are by what we've learned in society.
Now, and there are different types of trauma as far as whether it be physical, emotional, spiritual, and there are different levels as far as how one may get inflicted. Say, for example, you may be the victim, the George Floyd, where you actually have real life face-to-face contact. You may be that individual who is being traumatized just from social media, just watching these videos over and over. Or it may be an experience just when you're out and about and you could just feel that they're just the way you might be treated, whether it's at a restaurant, whether at a store or bank, that even though that person may not have put their hands on you or said anything, you already know that there's some type of energy as far as trauma or basically belittling of you as a person, as a human being. So even, and there's different ways to confront or even have dialogue. So there may be dialogue with your attacker directly, whether it's with that police officer or that person. But how for those individuals who just is more psychological, they're not necessarily going to be able to sit down with social media as far as to heal. So how would that individual start that process, or should they consider?
So, and especially what we're dealing with the news, different things, I think, especially with youth, we're becoming somewhat desensitized because we're seeing it so much, And I think in the case of George Floyd, this is the first time we witnessed it. Worldwide, we witnessed it. And with Facebook Live and all the other live medias, we're now witnessing these injustices upon people of color. So the one thing, especially with youth, we have to, children are now becoming desensitized to violence in an extreme amount of way. I see it on a daily basis in our TV and media and different things. So the healing that we have to do has to be taught. We have to teach each individual the wrongs and the rights and the value of life upon each other. We have to value each other. This is a thing of we can't just assume that this person is less than the other. That if you love to be loved, then I love to be loved. And man is man, no matter what. We all bleed red. It doesn't matter, what side, and who is pure. We all have a link at some point. We've been here 400, 500 years. There is a connection. And that's what we have to realize, that there is a connection between all of us. There is nobody who is pure of blood. There is a connection between all of us. If we research hard enough, then everyone is together. But we've been together since the beginning of time.
Thank you. Karel, so I'm going to have you play the recording for Lisa DuBois as far as how does healing begin?
How can healing start? I think that more Maafa type ceremonies is one way. But again, I think that really healing I touched on it before, but I'll go a little more into it. I think that really healing will not begin until we find a way to, the country finds a way to become fully transparent with the, what happened, with what happened with Native American Indians and with the enslavement of African Americans. If that is not taught, if people can't look at that and respond to that without freaking out and without making excuses, and so, we've heard there's so many excuses going on right now. It's amazing some of the things that I've heard people say in general. But yes, the beginning, I think the only way to heal is to make the history really, really high up on the priority scale. So if they won't do it, we have to do it. We have to do it. I was not taught about slavery in school. I'm much older, and there's some changes that have been made, but it needs to be, and it's just that it's so horrifying, that people can't, if it was a mirror and someone looked in it, the mirror would crack. You know what I mean? It's that ugly. It's that ugly. I hate to say it, but it is that bad. And so that has prevented us from healing because we couldn't even look at it.
And thank you, Lisa DuBois. For one thing she mentioned as far as being able to go to Maafa, this shows healing. Some individuals want to be able to take down monuments, and you also have the other side who basically saying certain things happened so long ago. Can't change history, can't change the fact that you were a victim of that person's role in history. But I would still want to know, what does healing look like as far as Lord, and what actions can be taken to be able to start seeing signs of progress of healing?
For those different things, of course, 2008, the election of Barack Obama was a process of healing. I vividly heard people growing up saying that we would never see a Black president or a president of color. And at the time, of seeing those type things. And now today's issues, the changing of school names. Just recently here, and I'm south of Houston, the debate of changing Robert E. Lee's name in schools. And these are part of history. His name will always be in history in the fight during the Civil War and so on. So part of that healing is not, celebrating those people who were oppressors and changing those things. And again, we're doing these things because here you are having children of African Americans that are going to a school under a person who was known for oppressing slaves. So those are signs of change and healing in society, the changing of the removal of monuments, big issue in the day. And these are artworks, they're sculptures made by an artist, but these sculptures are reminders of the pain. And that is part of trying to help the healing by removing some of these things from the society's eyesight and showing more unified creations. Okay, so, and then the changing of different educational subject matter. My school will now have African American studies as well. And here too, the discovery of the Fort Bend 95 an unmarked grave of Black African-American prisoners that was discovered this past year. The children will be given education of how this event happened. And so these type of things are healing. They are taking place around the country though. There are different things taking place around the country to help this healing because it has to happen in the new generation. Some people will bind to it and other people will still resist. That's just the way it is. We have light and darkness, we have cold and hot. And that's the way that this consistently runs. But those are signs of healing, these changes that we consistently have going throughout time. And it's not that we're going to just wake up one morning and all this is going to be done and this wound is going to be healed and we're kumbaya again. It is still going to be an ongoing thing, clean until we're on this screen and we're gone and someone else takes our place. But we have to consistently pass the torch. It never will just all of a sudden there's this great serenity amongst everyone.
Someone would say, why is there a need to protest? Is protest part of the healing, or taking down monuments? How is that helping the healing process? So some would say we need to not forget so that we could move forward. So what are your thoughts on that?
You saw a protest of undocumented extreme this past year. The protest just was not here. The protest was worldwide for the first time for one person because of this technology that allowed that to be seen. So yes, protest, and we've learned to peacefully protest. And of course, we know that that's not the consistency of it all. There are those protests that are violent. But yes, protest is a form of communication. And again, we must communicate. We must communicate with each other on both sides of the issue. But this time with the protest that we saw earlier this year in the midst of a pandemic, no one's ever seen such a thing. Protesting is one thing. It's another protest that you got out by the thousands with a pandemic disease that can kill you. So protest is and will forever be necessary because it is an extreme way. But now we even see the NFL. We just saw the opening of the NFL, and people with a social presence taking a lead within this debate. LeBron James, JJ Watts, these people on both sides of the issue, Black and white, but have millions of followers giving voice to it. Okay, so yes, protests will forever be necessary on these issues. How you protest is differently. So, for me, I protest on the canvas and I protest verbally as well, but my protest is on campus as well. And so I spread that way. And we want it always to be peaceful because we can't destroy hatred with hatred. You can't fight fire with gasoline, So you do want it to be, a peaceful protest, but it is necessary.
Even within the protests, you'll have situations where city government, mayors, police chiefs want to sit down. Now you're having to trust the other person on the other side to actually not only listen, because we've been voicing our concerns, our dislikes for a long time. How do we trust that they will do their part within the healing process? Or do we continue to protest until we see them do or make the changes happen?
Get real close. Vote. So you have, and this is where it now becomes an issue of politics. Is your city ran by a Democrat or Republican? So who are you given the responsibility to lead you? So you can't complain if you didn't vote. You can't get mad you didn't win the lottery if you didn't play the lottery. So it's very simple as that. Who did you give the control of your city? Is your mayor rushing to put you out there? Or is your mayor listening to the scientific numbers of COVID and different things to get you out of the house? And if we want to be real and honest about it, trying to make our economic status return as far as money in layman's terms. But who did you vote for to lead you in this pandemic? Because you don't know what's coming up next. 22 has been extreme. So what's going to happen in 2021? Who will you vote for?
Karel, Sloane, I'm going to have you play the response of Lisa DuBois for what does healing look like?
I was going to say, what does healing look like for an individual? It means that somehow you've been able to release the anger, because the anger itself, transforms into other areas. So, and it shows itself up. So finding a certain amount of peace within oneself, meaning that you recognize that, again, what happened in the past is, in other words, we accept the fact that it has happened. And so instead of being completely angry about it, I mean, of course we're going to be angry about it, but accepting that and really begin to move on and focus so much more on what can we do, so what can we do as individuals? Maybe have a separate, maybe at some other time have a separate Maafa and start inviting white people to come. In New York, white people do come, very few, but they come. But maybe one of the things that can happen is having them participate, and feel the energy that occurs within the group, within the context of a group. So as an individual, I think it's like to be able to find gratitude, and it may sound simple, okay, but it's not really that simple, because gratitude, in other words, gratitude for one's life, to recognize daily that we have so much more than they ever could imagine. So tapping into that gratitude will automatically make you less angry. When you focus, like, let's just, when you just take the focus off the things that make us angry about what has happened and what's still happening, is to stop for a minute, and say, okay, I'm going to put my hand on my heart, and I'm going to be grateful for being here. I'm just going to be grateful for having the experience of life itself.
One of the things that Lisa mentioned was, as far as with Maafa, having a separate Maafa, integrating that. I know from attending Maafa, it's been open to all religions, races, colors. but it also brings up the thought of integration. And I've had conversations with individuals feel like some say it's good, some believe it was part of the decline of the African American community, and also created trauma where you're living, or redlining, and so many other issues that came about that. So the question for you, Lord, as far as even within the healing, how do you feel, with integration, with inclusion, how is that either helping or hurting moving forward?
Moving forward, integration is here. It's been here. It's before my time. My father was one of the first of his class in Rayville, Louisiana, to integrate a white school. He was a basketball player, and he was one of the first to integrate those schools. And we're talking about in the early 60s. So at the time, we're talking about equality of education. That is today still the same, but is it 100%? No, we still can see the demographics of education in schools to be very high on one end or the other. Some schools, you may say 80% white, at 10% Black, and at 10% Hispanic. And then the others will trickle down to one Indian or one Asian percent. And then it'll be the opposite on a different side of town. So yes, we're integrated, but no, we're not at the same time. I work for a school that's predominantly Black, but I have a Hispanic dialect too. So it's more so maybe a 50-50. But I've also been in a school where I've seen it start off one way and end up another way within 5 years. So, and that could be also a couple of different issues by which we're talking about community change within that area. But integration must continue. You can't live on this earth without each other. We buy from each other. We sell goods from each other. So these things you have to coexist. You have to coexist. There's nowhere on earth that you won't find a Black person of some nature. Either you're Brazil, Dominican, these are still Black people, that derived and got brought here during the slave trade and were set off in these different places. So there's nowhere where you won't see our culture expressed in some different form and fashion. My first teaching job was not in America. My first teaching job was in Veracruz, Mexico, in a village called Isuasil. And Isuasil was basically a third world country within Mexico. These people lived in the mountains, washed in the rivers. I taught in a classroom that had no lights. So the union of those cultures was something I gave to those children who are now should be in their 20s, because I was teaching second grade. But that was, again, part of me sharing my culture with another culture, integrating it. Because some of those people had never seen a 6'7" Black man. People were stopping on the street and everything. But those are the things that we have to learn. And even for myself, going into college in 1993, I had not been exposed to some different cultures. One of my best friends is a Dominican. I had never heard of Dominican Republic, living in Louisiana all my life, which was basically, in the Gulf, right below us. So those things were things that we had to be exposed to. So yes, integration is necessary. It must be. In order for this to work, it has to be.
Integration's been around for some time now. But it seem like, I mean, it's almost like we're integrated, but some of the same situations are happening, whether it was Jenna Six, Breonna Taylor. So it's almost like, yes, we're integrated, and yes, we should know each other. Yes, if we trust each other, we shouldn't have these issues. But it seems like there's still something missing that is still causing this mistrust or this, I mean, some people say hatred or paranoia of Black people or people of African descent. So I'm trying to see why is that not helping as much as your neighbors know you?
Because we're passing down the piece from generation to generation. So my father grew up in the 50s and my father was born in 42. So he has visually seen a lot of hate from other people. I have too, but not to his severity. But those things have been passed on. But at the same time, I've witnessed a Klan meeting in the late 90s in Shreveport, Louisiana, in the late 90s, less than 25 years ago. So we're talking about the passing down of a generational hatred. So just as we're teaching love and trying to unify, that is still going on as well. And that's why I said this won't end just because of today. It is something that we will have to consistently treat. Just like COVID-19, we're going to have to consistently treat it. We've been consistently treating the flu. So we consistently going to have to challenge ourselves to be better people on both sides of the issue. But there's also that other side of the issue that's going to be consistently fighting back against us. And that's we just have to keep your head above the water through this whole time. And don't drown, don't give up. You know, so, you know, we have to keep going. We have to keep going, and we hope that our love overshadows the hatred, that we see more of it than we do the hatred. You know, I know at the first part of COVID, we kind of turned the TV off here at my household because it was just such repetitive sadness going on that it'll affect you within, okay? And even with the paintings that I've recently done, I had to make sure that I'm not being consumed by the energy of what's completely going around me, so I don't let the hatred or the madness, anger within me take full control, and to strictly sit back and analyze these things and then put them on canvas in a way that's not offensive towards others in healing, but a way by which it will ask you, how do you feel about this? How do you address this issue? And that's what I teach to my kids. It's the same thing. It's like, we can't just come out and say bang, bang, and show violence and gore and blah, blah, blah. We can't do that. But how can you creatively express your artistic feeling about what's going on around you? And we as artists have that responsibility to express what's going on around us. And each generation does that. Each generation has done that. We talk about artists such as Charles White. We talk about Murray DePillars. And then living artists that are with us, who are still expressing those things with us too, through the canvas, but being political in our social society.
You know, I've heard some individuals say, once an alcoholic, always an alcoholic, you're always recovering, you're always a recovering alcoholic. So it seems like when it comes to healing and dealing with this trauma, there may not be a cure, but it's always a process of constantly trying to make tomorrow better for each generation. Because granted, our ancestors, some didn't make it over from the ship. For them, they just decided just to take their life, and that for them was enough. And then those who did make it, whether you were Harriet Tubman or Frederick Douglass, everybody fought their own way to find their peace and to be able to heal not just themselves and their people. And it's almost like there's not necessarily a cure, but a process of finding peace. And hopefully at some point we'll find resolution within that. And if that can be, I guess, for some individuals, a sad truth that taking down the monuments doesn't mean that it's not necessary. Because it's easy for someone to say that, this monument has history, it's good to learn from it. But if you were to have a statue of a rapist up, no one wants to look at that rapist every day. If you would have a statue of Hitler, no one wants to look and honor him every day, whether it was part of history or not. But taking it down would be part of allowing that wound to actually start scabbing up and healing. And that can be exhausting, though. It's like every generation at some point, just like some elders, they want to pass the baton on to each generation to be able to continue to fight, to be able to continue to find some peace. And just because for me, not working in the field is peace enough for me, but for my grandkids, for them, having their own home may be their peace. And then for the next generation, it's about having our own community. So what would you say to individuals who want, as far as seeing this is going to be a long haul, should they, I guess, as far as how they find that peace and balance and still move forward, and knowing that this is not going to end from protesting in 10 years from now, or even up until their death? There's going to be a long fight.
And, these are our life. What we find as being rich definition is going to be different for each person. How do you perceive what is good for you? Maybe does $1 million make you happy? Not necessarily. You see millionaires who are very depressed and sad. But then you may see a person who's only making $40,000 a year and is always happy because they've made peace within themselves. I live in a very diverse community, and I speak to my white neighbors that are across the street from me. My Hispanic neighbors are down the street from me. So we have become happy within our community. When the hurricanes come, everyone made sure that everyone's house was fine. Even if you left, we had someone to call. We called our neighbor. Like, hey, what does it look like? It looks good. It's good. I'll go check everything, make sure you're all right over there. And these are different cultures amongst each other. And your being happy and knowing that this struggle will not end. It won't end. It should, but it's gonna be a consistent creation of betterment. You have to consistently become better as it goes on. And for each generation, they will learn something new. But if we don't understand history, we're bound to repeat the same issues that we did in the past. Lynching, you don't really drive around and see a whole bunch of people hanging from trees, but lynching has taken a different form. Now you see people putting knees on necks. Same thing. Okay, so are you going to, stop fighting because this is the same issue that your grandparents dealt with? No, because you too will become the grandparent. And now you have a grandchild that you want them to live and be happy, quote unquote, whatever that is for you, because each individual, is happy in his own personal way. Everyone doesn't like steak. Some people don't like pork. You know, so fish makes them happy, but pork makes the other person happy. You know, so, you know, to each his own on what his happiness is. But right is right and wrong is wrong. As simple as that.
Thank you. Going to move on to the next question. How do you know when healing has begun?
Healing started before us.
Mm.
It started before us. We were taught that healing was starting before us. The civil rights movement was healing. Okay, so the wars we have fight, those have been healing because they were for something. But healing is started before us already. Healing is consistent in all times. Healing will still be done. Pain will still be here. There's still going to be some injustice. And even since Floyd, we've still seen more pain. And the thing is, we have now this technology by which it can be seen more publicly. It can be seen live. The police come to your door, you put your phone up there and record it. And that's how majority of what we're seeing has happened through telephones. You know, I don't know if the inventor of the cell phone even thought this would ever happen, you know, but yes, this is consistent. It's not, healing was started before us, and healing will continually keep going after us. So I guess in some retrospect, we're saying, you know, why are we still doing this if it's going to keep going? Because it's the right thing to do. It's the right thing to do. We're supposed to be healing at all times. We should be healing at all times. You know, we could be very militant about it if we wanted to. And there are those who don't want to integrate, who want to, you know, stay within their community and those different things. But that is not how this will consistently build itself. We have to work together as a people, a society, not just African Americans and white Americans and Hispanic Americans, because we are all here together. And it doesn't matter where you go. I've been to Mexico, I've been to Chicago, I've been to Canada, I've been to all these places, and we are all there. There's no spot where I've been and there just hadn't been nowhere. Atlanta has white people too. so they're everywhere, and we are everywhere. So get along.
Thank you. Karel Sloane, I'm going to have you have Lisa DuBois answer the same question. How does one know healing has begun?
I mean, how do you know if you are healing? Yeah.
Yes.
I can't speak for other people, but I know that this is extremely painful. And you know you're healing when you don't feel as much pain. And again, I hate to repeat myself, but the only way to release the pain is to again feel gratitude for yourself and to be thankful that you can breathe. Be thankful that you can talk. Be thankful you can think for yourself and fight for voting. Like we're at a point in history where we're fighting for voting, but it's better than not being able to vote at all. So there has been some small incremental changes that have occurred, but if we don't continue on that path, making these little small changes, then things will never be, things will always remain the same. Right now, we're very focused on exposing the systemic racism that's in the country, so if we can expose it, we can begin to heal. You have to, see something and, you know, in order to heal. And you have to be able to visualize what healing looks like, you know, and visualizing healing, visualizing what life can be in a positive sense is a way of healing. So I think like if you can get up 5 days a week out of the 7 and not be angry about, you know, being, you know, not having enough money to, you know, buy the food you want, not being able to buy the house you want. And, you know, because, you know, it's a direct result of what they have done systemically to us. That's, if you focus on that, that's where you will be. If you take the focus off of that, you can then know you're starting to heal.
Thank you. And I want to go back to what you mentioned, Lloyd, as far as healing. And I didn't even think about it from that perspective, that healing has been taking place since before us. And it's very easy to look at your present situation and just think of yourself as far as how am I healing and what do I have to do to move myself forward, or my kids and their trauma. But we also take in consideration how our ancestors, our elders have been passing down this healing baton, and hopefully every generation they make the weight a little lighter based on whatever they were able to accomplish for themselves. And within that healing process, when you're living in the current moment, it can be difficult to think about the past as far as what's been done to get you this far. You only look at your current trauma and current misfortune or whatever the situation may be. And what would you say to those as far as to help to guide them, to let them know that even though they're going through this now, and even if they're dealing with it today, to show that balance as far as the gratitude for those who were able to make it lighter and started a healing process before them or before their ancestors and so on?
That it won't last always. This pain that we go through, and that's life. You're going to go through different difficulties through your life, and that is what life is. There must be these different traumas in order to have these different happiness that you have to have within your life. This is just like marriage. You know, you're married, you're not going to be in honeymoon mode forever. You know, so, you know, we go through these things to better ourselves. So we go through these periods of argument, discussion, communication amongst each other. And then we should hopefully come to a piece of a compromise by which we say, well, you have this, I have this, and we're both still standing the next day. And that's been the kind of the sadness of this, is that some of these issues didn't have to happen. You know, you didn't have to sit on his neck for 8 minutes and 46 seconds. Your brain should have been processing at some point, you know. So yeah, so these things have to go through these up and downs in life. And, you know, anyone who's been here a significant amount of time can tell you that it's not going to be roses and sunshine every day. Okay, so we have to get to a point of understanding that, yes, there's going to be protest and there's going to be pushback from that protest. But eventually, as they say, the right side of the aisle and the left side of the aisle have to touch hands and say kumbaya and come to a compromise to say that your side is okay and my side is okay. And we're still both living. You know, we don't have to kill the other in order for the other to be happy. You know, so, and that's been the big issue. You know, as far as you're a police officer, do you have to kill someone to defuse the issue? If your life is not being threatened, you have to put 7 bullets in his back to stop him? You know, Do you? In front of his children. So, these type of things, does it take 3 officers to take down a man that's less than 200 pounds or a woman that's less than 200 pounds? So these type of things we have to face with ourselves. How does these things, take control? But yes, there's going to be pain, and we want to be able to make sure that there are more good times than there are bad times. Very simple as that. That is a good and even life, that you can say that you have more good times than you had your bad times. Now, be it that you live to be 50, or be it that you live to be 105. We hope that you have had more good times than bad times. Because one thing that we all know, we all will leave, regardless of who you are. We're going to die. We just don't want it to be a tragic death. You want to be at home, surrounded by your family, and able to say goodbye. Not to see your father on TV screaming for his mother that has already passed. And that was the last vision you had of your loved one. So, yes.
But even within that, I mean, and I guess I'll bring it back to one of the things as far as when you got close to the camera and mentioned voting. We have police departments that are integrated, black and white. We have police chiefs that are of color as well. We have politicians, black and white. And we're still fighting for this equality in treatment. So some things some people say would be that individual. Some individuals would also say it's the system as far as the training, the way that they're taught to approach. Because I'm sure you've seen news clippings as far as a lot of police officers say they don't go into this job to kill people recklessly, but they're there to try to save and help individuals. But they're also part of the system and training that makes them react on average a certain way. So it's almost like we have to sit down and have this dialogue and talk to the individuals to start the process. We do have to vote. We also have to meet and sit down with other members of in politics to be able to change and correct these systems and policies. So within the healing process, how would we be able to, outside, because voting is one thing, you have to have how do you change the training process through voting? How do you change lethal force through voting? How do we change as far as not responding to mental illness issues through voting or through dialogue? What are your thoughts on that as far as being able to approach those?
When we're dealing with a very loaded question that has a lot of spurs and different lengths of where it goes, I'm a teacher, and I deal with a lot of mental health issues. Now, when we're talking about extreme and not extreme, some are just, I'm just going to be a bad kid. Others there are mental health problems. And I think that within the police forces and things, those things were not necessarily implemented into their training. And, the police are just another entity of our community that has to be, understand that these are people. You're a person and they're people, be it that there's a mental problem or not. Would you do this to your own friend? Would you want it done to yourself? So this is just a thing of humanity. But in any job, there are the good workers and the bad workers. There are teachers that teach and teachers getting paid. So there are those there are that in the police force as well. And mental health is a large issue amongst our youth from kindergarten to 12th grade. It is a large issue with our youth, and we deal with it every day, you know. So same thing. So yes, now the training of police officers has to change. I'm not sure about defunding and those issues, but the training of police officers has to change. I know in Chicago, they're doing community tours with senior students, touring the community with officers, showing them the people who are in the community who may be mental. But in our community, we know them. We know Mr. Johnny on the corner who may be suffering from post-traumatic war syndrome or different things. But we've known him all our lives. We know he's not harmful. But approached by a police officer, the situation may not be the same because they don't know. So those, again, evidence of healing. The youth, you know, we're being led by the children in healing. So that's a big thing, you know, of trying to get our police force to learn healing as well. So sensitivity to mental illness, sensitivity to cultural differences. Some people just don't understand each other's culture. And that's something we've been trying to, you know, express for many years, you know, the changing of, you know, well, these people do this in their community, but in your community, that looks like an aggression, you know, and how to approach. And then, you know, just the actual teaching of Black children or young Black men, if we want to be more specific, young Black men of how to approach a police officer. You know, when you're stopped, hands on the wheel. Yes, sir. No, sir. Don't make any sudden moves. These things are specific in our community in dealing with police officers. Other people, that wouldn't even be a change of thought, you know, when the police officer pulls them over. So yes, education on the side of the police officer must change as well. That's a part of our healing too. The education of our law enforcement must change.
You brought up as far as when you're watching news, at times people say, you know, it's you as a civilian, on average, the expectation as far as your response and calmness is at a higher level than someone who is trained and should be a lot more responsible with a weapon. And to me, it doesn't make any sense. If you are trained, if you have been given the weapon and the responsibility to monitor and secure a neighborhood of people, then your temperament should be a lot calmer and better. As a victim, whether a woman dressed a certain way, people shouldn't blame her. They should look at the person who is the aggressor or who. So it's all, I'm hearing a lot of things on news as far as people blaming the victim for not stopping, not doing certain things, or being able to freeze. I mean, not everyone every day walks around with a weapon and has one stuck in their face and assume that I'm going to be calm and react the way that you want me to be. I'm trying to get over this weapon that you have pointed over my face and really can't see anything else from that point. So the fact that we have to have these conversations with young Black men and girls as far as when they're dealing with police, when they're, how they post as far as moving, it's like people trying to train us civilians more so. To me, I understand we have to be trained because we're victims, but at the same time, should we not hold the ones who are doing or with the power more accountable than those who are being victimized?
Yes, and I guess you know, even in, we're talking about our police chiefs and different things, these type of things should just be, you know, protect and serve. Nowhere it says protect and kill, protect and brutalize, protect and, you know, embarrass, disrespect on either on their end. So if you are the person of authority, then you have control to make this thing go very smooth. Anyone would be somewhat offended to have a loaded weapon in their face, you know. So otherwise, you know, you need to make sure that we are, you know, making sure that the police officer, those of authority, are trained in knowing how to keep these things defused. Because in the end, all of these issues that we're talking about, we're not really necessarily saying that the victim created this. We're saying that the police officer did this. So, and then the other bad part is that, okay, the police officer did this, but he's not paying any penalty for doing this. That's where the anger comes in. It's like, okay, he killed him. He gets suspended with pay, which means he's at home collecting his check, maybe going fishing, you know. And then in the end of the case, he walks scot-free and a life is lost. And then rehired somewhere else, doing the same job again. So that's where the pain comes in, because there's no penalty for the wrongdoing. But if I did the same thing and I don't own a badge, we would have a whole different conversation. And it's just that simple. It's got to be equal. What's good for the goose is good for the gander. So you have to have the same, it's got to be fair. And that's what it is. It's not fair. Unmute, Gason. Unmute.
I would say fairness is relative. It's almost like you can't hold me accountable for like operating on someone with no MD license versus a medical doctor or someone who's an attorney. Once you're licensed, you're held to a higher level of accountability. And for the healing, at least for what's going on now, the trauma is not seeing accountability. And when you're constantly seeing someone dying, someone getting shot, it's not even about, people are not necessarily up in uproar of what that person did or that person being arrested. Is the fact that once that person died or was victimized, or there's no accountability on the part of the officer for what took place. And to me, that accountability is that trauma that is not being healed right now, at least for when it comes to shooting blindly and killing Breonna Taylor, Ahmaud Arbery. I mean, just all these. So when you're hearing that they went in, they did their job, they did it as they were trained, you're looking to, I mean, to me, that trauma is just that wound is still being picked at. And it creates that anger, it creates that frustration, it creates that emotional unrest. And trying to work past that to at least move to another level of healing is going to take some time. But I'm going to end with that and just allow you just to, if there's anything else you want to say about the exhibit, about the process as far as the artwork or anything else, open the floor for you.
Okay, so as far as the exhibit, this is my first virtual exhibit. And early in March, I had 3 gallery shows that were planned for the summer. And so when COVID decided it wanted to take place, it literally changed overnight. And so we're talking about, so I did link up with other artists, specifically Larry Poncho Brown, in becoming a virtual lineage of artists who were still providing art forms through a virtual setting, for purchase, but also in the format that we're doing it today, through educating through our artwork and spreading that artwork through to other people. And now the scenario is where these pictures that were in this exhibit have been in 3 different exhibits at the same time. How can you do that physically? Other than, reproducing and showing a print somewhere. But I've shown the original piece in 3 different places at the same time. And so then I tell my students, the difference between the masters and us is time. They had time to create masterpieces. I've had time to create masterpieces. I've done more work since March to now than I've done in 2 years because I've had time. I've threw away the distractions. I didn't have to leave the house. I can get anything ordered to the door. Amazon comes here quite often. So those things made it a quite different. We adapted as artists. We have adapted to this new reality. This will go on even after we, quote unquote, have control of COVID. This will go on. And so the piece Breathing Through the Years, it just won the People's Choice Award in Maryland. So, those things are like, I'm like, well, wow, look at this. It's in an exhibit in New Orleans. It's in an exhibit in Maryland. And it's on my Facebook page, Instagram page, LinkedIn, all these different formats that have always been available to us. And I'm guilty of being one of those people who are not a social media guru, but I'm very well now. I know how to do Teams, Zoom, and everything. And I conduct my classroom through these medias as well. So come Monday, I will be on Teams with my classroom, delivering education through art. So this has been an awesome experience. And then the virtual gallery. I thought it was just, okay, we're going to flip through like a slide screen at first. And then when I actually walked through a virtual gallery and looked at each picture, it's amazing. So it's like, you can be handicapped and not be able to walk and go through a gallery, So this adaptation to what we were forced into has been a good thing for some artists, and I have to say it has been a great thing for me as far as it helped me to boost my prints and get those things out there. I've sold prints around the country since March. So my art is now being probably more noticed in a pandemic than it was outside the pandemic, by all ages. One of my buyers was 80 years old and she had just learned how to use PayPal. So this is making people have to learn technology. We as teachers are using this technology to educate our children. Are we returning to the classes? Some yes, and some no. And then some will be hybrid. We will be, half and half. But as far as the artwork goes, this has been a wonderful event. And I've sent people to the gallery, and it's kind of a little tricky if you're not savvy with the mouse to move through. But otherwise, once you get it, it's quite fun and it's quite unique. And then I found out that I can go and create my own gallery. Like, oh, I have a whole showing here of my work in a virtual gallery. So it's a wonderful tool and event, and I'm very honored to be able to do this in my home state first, and I went to Southern University in Baton Rouge. And so it was an honor to be able to do that for a gallery there in New Orleans. I've shown at Stella Jones before in different places in New Orleans. And so it's quite unique. And if this is how we have to do it, then this is how we have to do it. We take nice quality images and we still keep going. We adapt to the situation. And even with all this, the different things that we're dealing with in society, with the brutalities and different things, we have to adapt. You know, that is the end process. We have to adapt to what the world is going to offer to you. You know, each one teach one, and each one teach the other one how to love each other.
Thank you. On that note, I'm going to pass the microphone to Karel Sloane to take over. And any questions or comments?
Is it possible we could screen at least one more of Lisa's responses?
Oh,
Either
yes.
what is your inspiration or what do you have coming up? Or
Okay,
she also had a really great commentary on the difference between New Orleans and New York City, just because that's where she's based. So we got 3 left, but we don't have enough time to do all 3. So whichever one you want to run would be great.
Her inspiration.
Okay. So what is your process or inspiration for your work?
Yes.
So photographically, I just basically become, I feel like gratitude again myself to be able to be there to photograph it. So I basically connect, you know, with the energy that's around, and that's how I take my photographs when I'm in. I certainly feel much more taking emotionally when I take photographs at a Maafa or a tribute to the ancestors than if I'm going out to photograph a parade, which I've done plenty of parades.
That was your shortest one. So
okay.
I do also want to give a huge, giant acknowledgement to Morgan Malin Grant, who is our creative productions coordinator at Ashe Cultural Arts Center. She is actually the one that is responsible for rolling out. I made the videos, but she's rolling them. She's making sure that everybody can see them and that Lisa can be part of this conversation while she recovers from surgery. So, well, I would like to thank Gason Ayisyin. I think this is our 6th Maafa, and it's the 5th one that you've curated, I believe. And we are forever grateful for you to do that. I would like to thank all of the artists that are in the exhibit for allowing themselves to think about these questions, especially in this time. I would like to thank Lloyd G. Wade this evening for all of his wonderful thoughts and things that he shared, and also Lisa DuBois for her thoughts and her feedback. And I would like to encourage everybody to tune in on September 27th, which is a Sunday, at 3 in the afternoon, where we're going to be doing another one of these artist talks. We actually have 3 more to go after today. We have 2 more that are like this, where we're gonna break out with 1 or, well, up to maybe 4 artists that are in the show. We have 10 altogether, including Gason. And then the last day, which is October 25th, which afternoon, it's a Sunday at 3, October 25th at 3 is going to be all of us together to close out the exhibit. And the exhibit will be on view until November 1st. And we're going to be doing other virtual exhibits as well. We are now discussing how to do, we have an annual Martin Luther King exhibit that we do every year that kicks off the Saturday before Dr. King's birthday. And it's with the New Orleans chapter of the National Conference of Artists. And we're talking about how we're going to do that. That's probably going to be a hybrid, but it all also depends. There's so many things so many factors to consider right now. It depends too on what phase we're in and whether there's a resurgence or what may happen in light of the pandemic. The current plan is for it to be a hybrid, where we'll have a physical show that people can come see in some capacity while we try to figure out how to do that. And it'll have a virtual component as well. And I'm looking forward to, I'm gonna wait, I'll be one of the last, I'll be in one of the last groups to talk about my responses to the exhibit. And we are grateful, we're based, Ashe Cultural Arts Center is based in Central City, and Central City has experienced a lot of aggressive displacement by the residents there, especially following the years of the levee failures after Katrina, Rita, and the levee failures. And it's gotten even worse. It's exponentially worse now. And so we stand for all that is positive and all that is helpful and growing community in the most positive way possible. Thank you, everybody, for watching. And again, please visit the gallery and please take the survey after you've walked through the gallery and had a chance to experience it. And please tell your friends too.
Where can they get the survey as far as the input?
We're going to put it up on the Facebook today. And then I know there's a comment section on the exhibit. I might want to put it in there too, so that it will be readily visible. As of right now, we have a couple comments that are up on the actual page itself for the exhibit. Put it on there on the front page and people can get it that way. And we're planning, I believe we are planning on making a pop-up for it. So when you visit our website, asheCIC.org, you'll see a pop-up for the exhibit, and you'll also see a pop-up for the survey. And that'll be in the next couple of days.
Will they be able to, are we planning on having a virtual tour live on Facebook and Zoom?
We have not discussed that yet. So I would say check the Facebook page. If you're not sure, check Ashe's Facebook page, check our Instagram, and visit our website.
Thank you. I enjoyed this artist talk. Thank you very much, Lloyd G. Wade, Karel Sloane, Ashe Cultural Arts Center. It's really been an experience, and I'm looking forward to the other 3 artist talks and just really having a conversation with them. Hopefully Lisa is doing better. I was definitely looking forward to having a conversation with her. I do apologize. I didn't realize you had more recordings of from her. So otherwise I would have made a little bit more time. But we may still make that available, possibly.
Yes, yes. And she's getting better and better every day.
Okay. Thank you. Any questions from anyone on Facebook?
I'm not sure if I don't know if we have the way to we'll figure out how to do that for the coming ones.
Okay.
I don't know if we have a way to do it right now though, especially since we're right at the, Zoom has a tendency when you are done, and we're just about right at time. So I would really like to close out and say good evening before our Zoom does that for us.
Okay.
All right.
All right. Have a good night. Have a good evening.
Thanks. You
Good
too.
evening.
Good night, everybody. Good night, Lloyd.
Good night. Thank y'all for having us.